Hello, my name is Roland Waterman, and I am filling in for Pastor Jeff Peterson, and this is Connect. And today I want to connect you with a ministry and a special person who's sitting next to me here, and his name is Singh, and he is from Iowa City, and he has a very unique ministry. It's a music ministry. It's called Elam Arrival, and I'm going to allow him to share with you what that's all about. But before he does that, I'm going to have him tell you a little bit about himself. Sonny lives in Iowa City. He's married. His wife's name is Margaret. I want to remember to share that part. So, Sonny, just tell us a little bit about where you came from and how you ended up in the United States and so on.
Thank you so much, Roland, and so glad to be here at Connect. I am just so thankful to be able to be here and communicate what God has done and just testify to what He's all about. So I was just 13 years old when I came to America to stay here. My mom actually came to do her PhD at the University of Iowa, and I just had to truck along and got to go to Iowa City West High and then University of Iowa and then Western Illinois University. But the key that I really want to share right now is that when I was 13 years old, 3 months or 4 months after we landed, we were told to we were told about a crusade happening in Kansas City. And the whole concept was there's an older gentleman who's going to be preaching, and he might be one of his last crusades because he's kind of at the end of his kind of ministry years. And so there's some excitement there, and I just went ahead with it, and my family went along, and lo and behold, this was actually Billy Graham's crusade. And that was where the gospel was really communicated to me for the first time. I experienced the presence of God. It revolutionized my life and began a relationship with the church, with music, and kind of the life changed. And so I was a high schooler playing, music in my bedroom for hours on end, writing songs, and God had a plan. And so that eventually led to a whole host of things, but that's where everything started. And it was amazing to me, and I'll look back and I'm just so grateful as to how God is so, He's so sovereign. His thoughts and ways are higher, way higher than ours. Yes. And so I'm just totally overwhelmed. That's how I wrote the story. The big part of my discipleship piece of it came about through my pastor and his wife, who were actually my aunt and uncle. They spent 14 years in the Middle East planting underground churches, and then came to America with a missionary call. And after 7-8 years of just time with them and how God sovereignly put me in their hands and in their care, I just was just revolutionized by the power of God and how He doesn't want me just the way that I was. He wants to transform me from the inside out. That was what happened in that period of time. And now to be on the other side of it and to be able to testify to His power and His glory and how He could bring, people from the other side of the world, I feel, just from my life, just tells me about how much He loves me. And the whole concept of the Elam Arrival is to now share that with the world. It's to share that rest that I found in Jesus. And through His people, through His church, through the people who are obedient to Him. And I believe that God really wants to communicate that out to the whole nation, to our state, to the young generation especially, because He is calling. And we got to pick up the phone and answer the call. And we just have to do our part. And so I'm so thankful again to be here and to testify to who He is and what He's done. And also thank God for all the pieces and the people in my life that He's able to put together to enable this moment to happen right now. So that's a little bit of the story, at least. Yes. There's a lot more.
Sonny, you were born in India,
yes,
correct?
I was,
you were born in India, and your family came over here when you were 13.
I was, yeah.
And your uncle is pastoring the church in Iowa City, and how long has he been there?
Yeah, so he came in 2007. He actually was at Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. He came in the same year, actually, in 2004, to America. And so my aunt and uncle were actually in Massachusetts for 4 years, or I guess 3.5 years, and those years were when I was doing high school here in Iowa, and so we got to connect and communicate and just kind of interact with each other. And God had it so that him and his wife Marina would come out to Iowa, so actually in Swisher, Iowa, and come and pastor the church that I was already leading worship at. And so God kind of put our paths together right there in 2007. And so those 7 years of discipleship were from 2007 to 2014. Those years were when God really interacted our lives together, and I was actually living with them, and I still am living with them. My wife and I both live in the same house, and that's another part of the ministry that's running right now. But when it comes to what God did there, it's just overwhelming because I got to, it took me a few years to really be humbled and to understand what was going on. But God put me in the care of two individuals who were completely sold out to Jesus.
Yes.
And they were byproducts of what God was doing in their lives in the Middle East. 14 years of planting underground churches, learning about what it takes to live in a persecuted land, and actually experiencing the power of God, the majesty of God in a land that's quote unquote locked down. And here they came to America, that a land that is quote unquote free but spiritually locked down.
Yes.
And I'm part of that, being here in America since I was 13 years old. I was locked down spiritually, and I needed to be freed up, liberated in the name of Jesus. And I got to experience that firsthand by living, and still do, by living with them and really being discipled by them, and seeing how God can, shape someone like a pot in his hands, like a potter. And so, I wouldn't be here without that intervention.
Yes.
I was revolutionized by that intervention.
And Sonny, you're going to talk more about your group.
Yeah.
So it's not just you.
Yep.
It's not just your ministry. It's a ministry of a whole lot of people.
Yep.
But I want you to just say a little bit about your wife, Margaret, because I have not met her, but she does a lot of your design work. And
so she's an artsy fartsy one. Let's just say. So she kind of handles all the creative pieces of it, and a lot of the video content that goes out, and the graphical work that you see at Revive Me. She's done a lot of that. So her family, even her brother, it kind of comes from more of a creative background, and he does a lot of that in St. Louis. And so she kind of takes that same mantle in a sense, and does a lot of that work in the background, and I'm really grateful for it. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
So now I would like for you to share a little bit about Elam Revival, Arrival. Excuse me, it's not Revival, it's Elam Arrival.
That's the second part of the story,
how you came at why that name?
Yeah. So I was in my last year of business school, so at the University of Iowa, and developing marketing plans and business plans, and my heart was completely, taken over by Jesus. And so everything that I was doing in business school was all just like ministry oriented. My marketing plans, they were like event, assignments that I'd called like Sunny Singh Band or See the Sunrise, or like I was creating all these different names and trying to figure out, what exactly God wanted me to do. The last semester, this is December of 2011, I had an opportunity to take a leadership class, and the requirement was to do something that required at least 9 people, to lead 9 people. And an event kind of was born out of that assignment, and it was called A Night at the Well. And it was the first time that I had a chance to take some of the songs that I had written over the years and put it to a band, and we put it together at our church called The Well. And this concept of this ministry was born. And right around that time, our pastor's wife, Marina, they were praying as well, like, God, what do you want, this to be called? And because we were thinking about the following months after that event and as to what God might do through it. And so she brought up this concept of Elam. And what's really amazing is that it was actually founded, this vision and this concept of the Elam Arrival really was kind of coming from years of prayer in the Middle East, because there were prayer times and prayer nights, and this whole message of Elam was born out of that time. And it's a really powerful story. In Exodus chapter 15, verse 26 and 27, the Israelites had just crossed the Red Sea, so they should have been in this amazing place, and they were praising God. But very soon after that, they were complaining. And they were like, God, great, thank you for parting the Red Sea here, but we're in the middle of nowhere. What's next? And they were getting all disgruntled, and God then laid an ordinance upon his people. He said, my people, listen to my voice, heed to my commands. It was a prophetic proclamation over his people. And he said, I'm the Lord who heals you. But that was a byproduct of their obedience. They had to be obedient to God in order to experience that. And so because they didn't even know, God is sovereign, he knew right around the corner was a place of rest. Elam, it's an actual geographic location, 12 wells and 70 palm trees, a place of rest in the middle of wilderness. But it came about after God laid an ordinance upon his people. And so that's the concept of the Elam arrival. The Elam arrival is the arrival to rest, just like Jesus talks about in Matthew 11:28. He says, come to me, all you are hurting and heavy laden. Come to me and I'll give you rest. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. And so this concept of rest is really just interchangeable with the word Elam. But then there's also an amazing opportunity that we get to tell the story about how the arrival to rest in Jesus comes from listening to his voice and heeding to his commands. Wow. And so it's really the bread and butter of what we're doing in every realm, whether it's church or whether it's music we release or a video we release or an event we do. Yeah. Ultimately, it's Jesus calling, his people, calling the generation of today to the rest found in him. Amen. And the peace that's found in him. And so, yeah, the meaning of the word really is deep, and it reminds us as to what we're doing. And I'm so thankful that it's birthed out of years of prayer. Yes. And years of just even experiencing that rest. And yes. So I'm so proud that I was able to attach it to what we do and to connect it and really tell the story of our ministry, tell the story of our pastor and his wife, right. Marina, too. So,
and speaking of that, Sonny, there you have a website. Yep. And you have a Facebook page because we're not going to be able to even touch the surface of what all your ministry is about in this little bit of time that we have today. Yeah. But they can go to your website. How do they find you on the web?
So on the web, it's theelamarrival.com. So THEELIM, arrival.com. It's all one word. And it's the same phrase that we have on our Facebook. So it's facebook.com/theelamarrival, THEELIM, arrival. And it's also, Twitter, Instagram, the same phrase. You'll find it everywhere, the Elam arrival. And for specifically when it comes to knowing about dates and where we're going to be traveling, if you go to theelamarrival.com/revive me, that's where a lot of our dates are listed as well. So a lot of ways to connect with us.
Yep. And the Facebook page, if they were on their own Facebook page, they could probably go to the search bar and just type in Elam Revival or Arrival. I keep wanting to say revival because it is about revival.
It is about revival.
I wanted to ask Sonny about why Iowa? What made his uncle choose Iowa? Why Iowa? I'd like you to take a moment to talk about that.
And you're not the first one who's done Elam Revival. So I see that God has some plan there, because really, that the mission of what we do is revive me. It's the concept of bringing the dead to life. But anyway, going back to this Iowa idea, our pastor, my uncle, my spiritual father, why did he come to Iowa? Even he doesn't know the answer to that question, because he didn't want to come. He's in Massachusetts. He was getting down with his seminary work out there, and him and Marina, his wife, were planning to live out on the East Coast. That was the whole goal. They loved it out there, and here God calls him right after graduating, actually, to come to Iowa. He actually had a dream about coming out here and shepherding this flock, and the fact that the pastor that was originally part of the flock that I was a part of, he was passing away. He was not doing well physically. Mm-hmm. And so he actually had a dream the night before that he would be passing away the next day, and that he'd have to come and shepherd the flock. But he didn't say anything about it to anyone, but came out and said, okay, I'll pray for see how the leadership, and how the board, how it all comes together. And lo and behold, months later, it actually all panned out in a way that he did become the senior pastor of the church here in Valley. It was called Valley Church at that time, but now it's called The Well. And so he landed here in Iowa, and he asked the question, why Iowa? And the burden of this revival existed in his heart at that time, because he knew. He talks about how he went to Massachusetts and how he was driving on streets and seeing for sale signs on churches, and and seeing how organizations that were not Christian were purchasing these buildings to use them for museums and things like that. And he's like, how is this possible in America, the land that sent all this content out to the world and has been such an amazing spearheader of missionaries? How is it possible that this can happen? And so that burden of revival was already kind of being birthed and the seeds were being sown. But when he came came initially to Iowa in 07, he felt that the message wasn't resonating a lot. People were not understanding. They were not acknowledging the need for it. Mm-hmm. You know, it's hard to say I need to be revived means I have to humble myself and realize I'm dead, and it's very hard to admit to that.
Yes.
But that started in that moment. But then as he started to minister, and as years went by, and even as God started to work in my life and in our team, and all that was kind of coming out of the church, and the faithfulness that Pastor Marie and I were developing, sharing and being faithful in, this idea started to be born in his heart, and that, you know what, in order for our nation to be revived, the heart has to be revived. We are the heartland.
Yes.
And I believe that my pastor, he's a prophet. That's kind of his calling, and prophets see the nation most often. And so you'll always, whenever you hear a message from him, he'll talk about the city, but then he'll also talk about the nation, because he literally is living and breathing and carrying the burden of the nation. Like, I see it every day. And so and that's why he believes that God's placed him in the heartland, because he knows that the heart has to be revived in order for the outside to be able to really hear it. And so it's just like any life, the heart has to start beating before the body starts to wake up. So
let's talk about your website a little bit, and what people, or Facebook page, they can follow you on Facebook. Mm-hmm. But what would they find on your website? And I'd like for you in particular to talk about your partner churches, and also talk about the music albums that you've already made.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. So as a ministry, we have, we're ministering to the ears. So we have theelementarrival.com/listen. And so you can listen to the songs that have been birthed out of our movement, birthed out of our ministry. I'm a songwriter. I'm a worship leader. I write songs for the church. I believe in the presence of God. I believe that songs bring heaven down to earth.
Yep.
And so I've kind of taken more of that worship mantle, writing songs for the church. But then we also have other artists like Austin Hoffman. He's a rapper, and we found out that rap is a really amazing way to connect with this new generation. Mm-hmm. And we can tell stories through rap. We can communicate harder theological concepts. We can even create things that resonate with the present day through rap. And so he kind of also embeds himself in some of the songs that we've written as worship songs, but there's an identity there that he carries, and when we play live, he can really connect with an audience from his point of view, his own story. And then we also have Mitch Moreland, who does a lot of the production work on the back end for us, but he also writes amazing spoken words, and they're poems, and they're really artistically, creatively sharing, again, fundamental basic truths of the gospel, but also through the lens of his life experience.
Yes.
And so that's a small example of how there's voices that, actually this song that we wanted to play, Revive Me, does a really good job of sharing how those voices interact, because the song I've written called Revive Me through just hearing messages, and then there's an element that Mitch plays in that he sings, and he doesn't sing, he speaks a verse in the song, and then Austin raps towards the end, and Pastor closes it out. And so those four voices are pretty much the voices of our ministry. Yep. And so that song really does a good job of telling that story and showing how it all plays together. Okay. We've got theelementarrival.com/videos as well. And so, video, no S at the end, just video. And there's a bunch of videos there. There's some trailers that come from the events we've done in the past, as well as some of the spoken words that we've put out. It just there's a 12 video playlist that you can watch and see. And then we've also got information about our weekly service. So if you're in the Coralville, Iowa City, North Liberty region, Cedar Rapids region, you can get some details on our Sunday morning services there. Also our worship nights. We have Friday night worship nights at our home. And that's been something that God's used a lot for the Revive Me piece of this. We've also, at the end of it all, have an opportunity where people can support our ministry as well on the website too. Yep. And then Revive Me, the mission, there's an actual full page that is dedicated to that. So theelementarrival.com/revive me, which kind of puts the case, there's a problem in our nation. Why are we doing this? but then also the dates that we're traveling and some more content from the book as well that tells a story about our mission.
I think at this time we would like to actually have you watch the music video that he's referring to, the song in particular.
Yeah.
We'd like to just pause the program or the interview here to have you just listen to that. So sit back and listen to this. Let the message of it sink into your heart, okay? And we'll be right back with you.
Yep.
This is my comfort in my affliction. Your word has given me life. And here I remember all that you have done. How you rid my soul of strife.
So, Sonny, that's incredible. I mean, they just got to see, and you might say, meet some of the other members of your team.
Yeah.
And you have made some CDs or music CDs already. I'd like you to just take a minute or so to talk about those, and then we'll close out by having you share about some of the events you've done already.
Yeah. So if I can take this real quick.
Yep.
This is our first record called Rise Waters Rise. And we released this in 2014, May of 2014, and it was really the first official launch of what we do. And we got to release it out of Nashville, worked with a producer in Nashville, and it's got a full 12-track record. And it does a really good job of telling the story of our initial foundation. You know, we want waters to rise in a broken land. And that's the whole concept of this record here. And then we were able to work with some folks out in Redding, California, and got to travel out there and work and record at the Sound House. And this is a live record we recorded in a studio out there with some folks that have worked with Jesus Culture and the Bethel Music people. Yes. And we got to write our own songs, and it's also got some of the rap in here. But this is really a good record that tells a story of the heart behind Revive Me. And so not all of these songs have been released yet publicly, but if you contact us directly through our website, you can get this. And if you have any other questions in regards to how to get this particular product, go ahead and get on our Facebook page.
Yes.
So.
And you also have a book.
Yes, and so this is the book that Pastor wrote called Revive Me. And it's just basic, a national call for personal revival. Yes. It's just a foundational, fundamental call to the body of Christ in America to just come back and cry out for the mercy of God. And that's the foundation for Revive Me as well.
Yes.
So,
well, this is what I would call segment one, because next week, Sonny's going to be back on the program, and he's going to talk about some of the events that they've done and what they have coming up. They have got an exciting summer and early fall planned with, what do you call them again?
So it's the Revive Me Tour, Revive Me Iowa 2018 Tour. So. Yes,
and we'll talk about what those dates are and where they're going to be in our next session, which will air the week from now. So anyway, I just want to say that I have had the honor and privilege of sitting and talking with Sonny, and I am so glad to know him. And I'm glad you've had the opportunity in watching this video to get to know him. And I'm going to ask you to, if you've watched this, to let your pastor know what this is all about. And stay tuned to next week's program so that you can see what is coming up. In fact, just to mention to you, Cedar Falls is August the 18th.
Yep.
And then Northern
Iowa, yeah.
In Clear Lake?
Yep, Clear Lake.
The 25th, and then there's going to be another event in Cedar Rapids.
On the 15th, God willing, yep.
Of September?
September, yep.
And then September 22nd is going to be right here in Dubuque.
Yep.
And November 2nd in Iowa City. So thank you for staying tuned. Make sure to watch next week's program. God bless you.